Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Grab your goodies so you can munch while you're sitting here and waiting to get up to the microphones. And we'll get this meeting started so we can get all the questions in today that we can. Welcome, and this is our second of the series of legislative breakfast this season. I'd like to have the legislators just kind of stand up to the mic and introduce yourselves so we know who you are. I know there's a few I don't know anymore. There's been a lot of changes since last year. Mics are closest. You can come to this one. I'm just using it because I don't want to we need the extra mic out here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Conlon. I'm a state representative. I represent Cornwall, Goshen, Hancock, Leicester, Salisbury, and Ripton. And I'm on the House Education Committee.
Good morning. I'm Robin Shy, representing Middlebury. My district mate, Amy Sheldon, sends her regrets. She is doing her day job and has an all-day meeting in Waterbury, so she's not here today. I sit on House Ways and Means.
Good morning. My name is Chris Bray. I live in Bristol, and I'm one of your two state senators for the Addison District, which is Addison County, Huntington, and Buell's-Gore. In the Senate, we serve on two committees. In the morning, I chair Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and in the afternoons, I'm serving on Government Operations.
You people are going to be busy today, I can see that. I guess most of you have been to one of these before, but I'm going to re-up the rules and regulations to be efficient to get this done. Each one of you has 2 minutes to present a question. Please think about that when you go to get up to ask it. And they can be directed to either one of the legislators or senators or the whole group. Once they've finished, the moderator will ask if any guests would like to follow up on the issue. If there are no other comments, the moderator will ask for another question. We're not going to go past 20 minutes on a topic. I'll try to, Jim will keep track of that for me. The way we know what's happening is if you are standing at the mic and you're looking up front, you see the red light up there. That means that you need to stop. Your time is up. If it's green, it's time to go. If it's caution, you've got a few seconds or minutes left. And that's how it operates. So we got a mic here, we got a mic in the middle. I know it's going to be a little tough getting back and forth because the tables are close together. But go to a mic. Don't wait to stand up for the next person. Let's do it like they do at the airports. One jet's waiting for the next one to fly, so we get as many questions as we can. By the way, I'm Bill Scott with Addison County Farm Bureau. Jim Morris up front, keeping track of everything, and I have a backup person in case I lose my voice, Tim Buskey, sitting over there on the other side. So, first question up. Who's going to be the first questioner this morning? Either that or be a short meeting. Go right to the mic, and then I'll tell you. Go ahead.
My name's Paul Miller. I'm a paramedic in this building, and we're hosting you. So I want to ask the audience some questions, and that is, how many people think this is a municipal building? Can I see a show of hands? How many people think that EMS is a municipal service? Show of hands. Okay, we're not. We're a private nonprofit, and this building is paid for by your donations and a small assessment to the town. So we have a new firehouse, and in this building we still owe $800,000. People here are getting paid puny wages. The hospital pays a lot more and it has been poaching our people. So it's going to come a time where you may not have ambulance services available. And I want you all to think about that. Bristol and Virgins had been all volunteer. Now they're going to paid services because they cannot attract enough volunteers. So just give some thought to what's going on here And if you would like to see an ambulance continue, you're probably going to see a assessment in each town of the 10 towns that we serve increase this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your service too, by the way. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you for that reminder and eye-opener for folks. I was an EMT up with Charlotte Fire and Rescue for years, and we've been talking government operations this year, actually every year, at ways to try to improve this challenging situation where you have to fundraise, in essence, to run programs that most of us think of as ordinary municipal service, police, fire, rescue. People tend to put them all three together, and yet they're not supported in the same level. So thank you for your work. We're looking at ways to improve how the training, pathways into training, supports, but I would say it's a challenging situation, and we have to keep after it. Thanks for reminding people to authorize at town meeting your town's contribution, and I'd encourage people to consider subscribing.
Thanks.
Tim Buskey from Addison. Question, since we talked about porters poaching and wages, and I'd like to just ask a question of the legislators that are here about the family leave bill. We know that the governor vetoed it, and the veto was sustained apparently. Why can't we go back again and find something that we can all agree on family leave? Is there no possibility that we can go back and do something in the area of family leave?
Well, as the lead sponsor for the House version of the paid family leave bill, I can tell you that we were extremely disappointed at what happened this past week, where the override, we needed 100 votes and we got 99. We thought we had 100, and in the end we did not. The governor is going to go ahead with, I assume, unless it doesn't get funded, with a bill it's in the contract for the state employees, which all of you will be paying for, not the state employees. It's going to come out of taxpayer dollars to pay for, and they're going to, it's a much less generous bill. It's going to be 6 weeks. It may only be at 60%. I don't have all the details actually on the bill at this point on what's happening with that contract. I have not seen the actual contract. We have, it's unlikely that anything more is going to happen this year, this session, because we're already going into week 6 of the session. We have a lot of other bills that we're working on. We have bills, today the governor is going to make his decision on what he's going to do with the minimum wage bill. This is day 5 of the bill being on his desk. We have a lot of other issues that the House and the Senate are going to be taking up, and so I'm not expecting that we're going to be spending a lot more time on this session. But it's very disappointing. I wish I had a different answer for you.
Following up on the gentleman who spoke at the very beginning about funding for EMS, is there anyone in this room who's a legislator who's thinking about giving the electorate the ability to, based on categories, put their money, not in addition to, because people are already being forced out of the state because of spending money that we don't have, but I'm talking about giving the electorate the ability to put money towards a certain area and not have it spent on areas that they think is total BS.
Who would like to handle that question, Chris?
Representative Schy, as a member of Ways and Means, probably has some insight into the notion of paying in and choosing what you want. But I think and sometimes it's referred to as lockboxing money. It's very difficult to do that, and there's very legitimate reasons for that. The chief amongst which is we have representative governments. We elect 180 people from around the state, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. They show up in Montpelier. They do the best they can to sort out the priorities on a real-time basis. And there's always more demand than there is money to spend. So the idea that we would categorize and sort of lock up funds for a particular project, I understand that the attraction, and yet we count on electing people so that they can take into account all the factors and use their judgment to make the best possible decision year after year.
There's 0.2% tax, okay? I mean, this is getting just to be Norquist nonsense. You can't be taxed. What is that? We're educated with tax dollars. Our kids are educated with tax dollars. What's the problem? You like nice roads, you gotta pay taxes. 0.2% and it went down. Well, we're gonna work on that veto-proof majority in Addison County. I guarantee you that. And that I'm gonna be really disappointed when the minimum wage gets vetoed, all right? A lot of upset people about these things. So, keep on with the you can't tax me nonsense, all right? That was ridiculous. And this may be germane. After last week's session, I wrote to Jim Condo's Secretary of State in Vermont about the question of asking you about your ballot, okay? Asking you to identify your party at the presidential primary election, and he wrote back, he emailed back, he apologized for the long email, but he says the appropriate statute is in Chapter 57, he said C-17 VSA 2704. All right, so this is a requirement of Vermont law that when you vote in a presidential primary, you have to identify your party. You have to pick one ballot. All right, and that this is from pressure from the national parties. They want official registration. Vermont and other states have resisted, and this is what we have to do now. So I hope town clerks aren't given a hard time, because they are required to ask in the presidential primary what your party affiliation is.
Thank you. Make sure when you get up to the mic, get real close, like a lollipop, so you can be heard. Mark?
Mark Bobin, Addison, Vermont. I brought that question up at the last meeting in Virgins, and my problem is that's a forced contribution to the political parties who are not governed by the legislature. This refers back to what this other gentleman was saying about lockboxes. The problem with them is the money is spent without representation. We don't get to vote. This money is a subsidy to the parties, and we don't have to, we have to declare who we want to vote for. And if the parties want to have a closed primary where only their members can vote, they should pay for it. It's that simple. And the question is who are the legislatures that changed this law that makes us disclose this? This is a violation of the right of association in the federal Constitution. We have the right to associate with whom we want and not associate with whom we don't want. So even though it's in the statute, it's still unconstitutional. And if anybody feels the way I do, I'm willing to push it further. Thank you.
Robin? No.
Ruth. Senator Harding, otherwise known as. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I have kids, and I try to take them to school on Monday morning because it's the only morning I have to take my children to school, because I'm in Montpelier every other morning. And I have teenagers, and they don't always want to get out of bed. So it can be difficult to get here on time. But I just want to add to the gentleman's question and answer. I also reached out to the Secretary of State after last week's legislative breakfast to get some more information on your question. Secretary Condos, and I encourage you to reach out to him directly. He is a wealth of information on our voting laws. said that this was a law that was passed in the 1970s, and it was a compromise between the national laws and parties and Vermont, because Vermonters don't want to have to declare a party. Many other states, you have to declare what your party is publicly and only can vote in the primary for your party. So the compromise was that every 4 years during our presidential primaries, we would be required to declare which ballot we want to take. Doesn't mean you have to declare which candidate you want to vote for. You can still vote for whatever candidate you want to vote for. So it is state law, and has been for many decades. And so I would just encourage you to reach out to Secretary Condos if you want more information on that and that. And I'm also a member of the Education Committee and the Agriculture Committee and your state senator, or one of your 2 state senators. So if you have questions about anything else, I'm happy to answer those questions. I don't know that there's more to say about this topic.
I find it disingenuous in the least when we have parties claiming that we have to secure our elections from the Russians or anybody else that wants to meddle with this. And the fact is, with modern data mining, which isn't that modern, I was doing it back in the 70s, with one cycle you can identify communities. One cycle, I mean the primary and the general election, you can identify communities to target with information, like the Russians were doing. After 3 cycles, you begin with an 80%, 85% confidence identifying some of the voters. So you can say they don't have to declare who they're going to vote, but with data mining, you can identify them. And that's a direct threat to our system of government. Thank you. If anybody wants to know how to do it, I'll tell you.
Who's up next?
I'm Linda Andrews from Bristol, and I just want to know our legislators' feelings on the governor's proposal to increase our revenue by gambling, sports betting and Keno gambling. I just want to know how you feel about that.
Is there a gambler among us?
Need to learn a little bit more about it, but my gut says I'm not a fan. I've never been a fan of the lottery, although I realize the money that it brings in, especially to the education fund, but expanding to Keno and sports betting, I'm not sure it does our state any favors.
I'll second that.
Third.
Fourth.
Bob Ziegler, Bridport. This is a different subject. I missed the beginning. You know, we have a demographics problem in this state, and we aren't having growth. And I think that's probably going to be the wave of the future. That's probably going to be the wave of the future. If you look at our history, we had no growth for 150 years. We got into the 60s when IBM came to Essex Junction because the owner, the principal, liked to ski, and we had great growth through the 60s and 70s with the rest of the country. Now we're in no population growth, or very close to it. And if you look at the demographics overall, at least as far as I have, maybe people have better data, we're not going to see growth in the future. So if we're going to solve our, quote, demographics problems, we need to find a way to keep Vermonters here and make the lives that people have here as good as possible. If we do that well, we may attract a few other people, but we aren't going to see the population growth that we've seen in the past, and we aren't going to see the growth that big cities in the South are seeing, because people in general are migrating from rural areas to urban areas. So if my premises are correct, we need to keep the people here. And if you do look at the data that came out recently, the population that we're losing is our youth population. And how do we keep our youth is we give them jobs and we make their lives easier. It really disappoints me that the minimum wage is being questioned by the governor so strongly,
And it really upset me that the paid family leave was vetoed for a private system that he proposed a year ago, came up with a speculative fee of $300 per person per year. This is versus a 0.02% sales tax, which if you do the numbers, a working mother at better than minimum wage, $12 an hour, $24,000 a year, would pay $48 a year versus the governor's now recently speculated $300 a year. How is this affordable and how is it even fair? I think we're going the wrong way with that veto. Got it. Thank you.
Well, I was just going to add something. Here's the microphone. Thanks for that, Bob. I don't know that you had a question, just a statement, but just to add a little bit to your concerns about the demographic crisis, I agree that we should be looking at ways to make Vermont more affordable, like a paid family leave program for young parents and people who have to take care of elderly or sick relatives. I think that that is something that would definitely make our state more attractive for people to come and to stay. I also just wanted to let you know about a bill that I'm working on in the Senate Education Committee that I think has similar goals. And this is a program that would provide full tuition assistance to students at our community colleges up to a certain income level. Our students at our community colleges are often our most vulnerable students, and they are often our first generation students. And it is often an entree into higher education and additional post-secondary job training. And so this program would provide students who attend any of our Community College of Vermont campuses, and there are 12 around the state, plus many, many online courses. And these students get associate's degrees or certificates, job training certificates. So I am trying to get support for this program in my education committee and the broader Senate. I believe that this, similar to paid family leave, is a program that will help attract young people to stay in Vermont and get more people to go on to higher education. As many of you know, we are a state that graduates one of the highest percentages of students in the country, and we have one of the lowest percentages of students going on to higher education. So we do well at getting them out of high school, but then they don't go on to further education. And in the 21st century, nearly all good paying jobs require at least some post-secondary education. So this is a bill, the Ccb Scholarship Bill is what it's called. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's a bill that I hope that we can get support for, and thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to add a little bit more. There's a lot of myth about who's leaving Vermont and who's coming to Vermont. And if you want to see some actual data, if you go to the House Ways and Means website and under where there's this whole section below on documents and you look for the witness, Graham Campbell, who's from our Joint Fiscal Office, has done a presentation on taxpayer migration. So you can actually see the data that he gathered from the IRS and other places of, where the flow is, what's happening. And it turns out that it's people in the 25 to 45 age group who are making between $25,000 and $75,000. That is that's the largest group of people that are migrating out. So it's not that always people that are just leaving college and going. So anyway, there's some interesting data there that I suggest that you take a look at. And there was something else I was going to say, but it's now completely gone out of my head. So anyway, more to come. Go ahead, Chris.
I thank you, Bob, for that question or remark. If you look back at that data, from the 60s through 80s, 125,000 people, I think, moved to Vermont. Some of them maybe came for IBM, but I think a lot of people came for quality of life. And yes, we have a demographic challenge, but I think Senator Hardy was talking about creating a better pathway to additional education and training, not just school, but also training programs. We have we have a great demand for, and folks in the trades as well. But we have some things I just want to pause in the midst of what could feel like doom and gloom to look at some stuff that we have done that has worked really well. We created the nation's first statewide energy efficiency utility, Efficiency Vermont. Over the last 20 years, we've invested through our energy efficiency charges roughly $658 million, and it's saving us $2.4 billion. So we've also created a whole industry that's helping people do things like weatherize, do higher efficiency installation. Those are all jobs that stay here, and many of them pay quite well. For instance, in the solar industry, the average wage, or the clean energy economy, average wage is about $28 an hour. That's above average for Vermont, and so there's an opportunity for us to do more work on the energy side. We have the cleanest grid in the United States. We have an opportunity to use that to the benefit of everyone, both in terms of saving money and reducing emissions that are driving climate change. So, and I'll do one other thing that we're doing quite well on, and that is we started the Farm to Plate program 10 years ago. If you look at the data, yes, we see a decline in the number of dairy farms, but we've had an increase in the overall number of farms. Many of the folks who have come in are younger operators, and we've diversified what we mean by our agriculture to embrace many types of food and the beverage industry. So the net result is, in the last report from Farm to Plate, I saw 7,700 additional jobs, 842 new businesses, over $400 million in new income. So when I look at clean energy economy, our food and ag economy, I see opportunities for Vermonters to step up and double down on what makes, play to our own strengths, our unique economy that is very place-based. Vermont is not the same as any place else, and when we pay attention to what we do well, we do better as a community.
Dave Silverman from Middlebury. I really just wanted to stand up to thank Senator Hardy for introducing her bill to make community colleges in Vermont tuition-free for students who can't afford it. I think that is the kind of policy that we need in this state. K through 12 education is, kind of where we are, where we have been for a while. It is insufficient for the modern economy. If you take a look at what happened during the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, the people who suffered the longest and the worst, the people who were unemployed the longest, were the people with the fewest degrees and credentials, people with advanced degrees. The more advanced degree you have, the less likely you were to be negatively affected by the financial crisis. Community colleges are just another branch of public education. That's how it was when I was a kid. People in my community, when I was growing up in New Jersey, could go and sign up for a class at community college for $50 a class. That's what we need. We need to make community college truly a community college. Let's let everyone get the education that they want. We don't force anybody to do it, right? We should make it all available to people. And right now it's too expensive because Vermont invests very poorly in its public post-secondary education. We are among the worst in our state support for state colleges and universities. Let's reverse that. Let's start at the community college level where it's most cost effective and where it reaches the people who need it most. Thank you.
Hi, Margaret Cloak, Middlebury. I'd just like to comment on my frustration with the governor. The legislature seems to work its tail off trying to come up with these programs of taking care of our children, with daycare and that kind of thing, and he's not supportive of that. He keeps vetoing everything. We've been to the State of the State meeting, or speeches that he's given. We've gone to Mount Pelier to hear those, and every year it's the same crap, excuse me, but he just repeats talking about getting people to move to Vermont. He expects all these people to come into Vermont and save us all from what he's not agreeing to from our legislators. the programs that they propose are great, and they're logical, and they would work if he'd give them a chance. But he just keeps vetoing them. So I think we really need to look at what's going on here and think about if we want to keep him in the slot, because he's just not being helpful at all. And it's the same garbage every year. Oh, we have to get people into Vermont. We'll take care of the people that are here, for heaven's sakes.
Next question, please.
I just want to make an announcement that is related to all these issues. In Salisbury on Saturday, there's going to be a talk on the infinite economic growth and their fairy tales that destroy ecologies and communities. And that's Saturday between 10 and 12 at the Salisbury Congregational Church. And it's going to be done by Dr. John Erickson from UVM. It should be very informative, and hope that you can attend.
Heidi Willis from Salisbury, and I'm on the Conservation Commission that's actually sponsoring that program. So, the idea there is that we live on a planet that cannot endure infinite growth. So I have two things to talk about. One would be just to throw that idea out there. We need a different economic structure, because an economic structure that is built on continuous growth is going to collapse at some point in time, because our environment will collapse. It is collapsing. So just something to think about. And on a maybe lighter note, or at least it seems to me a lower hanging fruit note, and Chris, I think you have been talking about this. I just wanted to ask about wanton waste bill. There's a lot that's going wrong in the world today, and it seems like figuring out a way to not kill our fellow critters on this planet for no other reason than we enjoy killing is something that we might be able to figure out how to do. And I think you were working on something. So, thanks.
Yes. So each year we have a Fish and Wildlife Bill. That's part of the work we do in Senate Natural Resources and Energy. That falls to us. And some of the things are just updating dates, technical specifications, etc. But one of the new provisions we're looking on adding is a wanton waste provision. So Vermont has a long hunting tradition, and I'd say there's widespread support for hunting in Vermont. But it doesn't feel much like the Vermont way to me, and to many hunters I speak with, to go out and kill an animal and then discard it, leave it there. And you know, probably to be a little philosophical, one of the ways you honor something you have killed is to eat it, right? It's like, it's part of you after that, literally, and it's we're always eating something that's been grown, so whether it's a plant or an animal, so when that system is functioning well, it's a respectful system. But to kill something and discard it is not, I don't think that's Vermont way, and we'll be looking to move a provision forward that prohibits that kind of taking.
So, Drew Hazelton, I'm actually not from the area, but I was asked to come up and speak a little bit to EMS-related issues. I chair the Vermont EMS Advisory Committee that's been studying the issues that we heard about first as far as your emergency medical response system. And I've got a couple pieces of information that I want to make sure everybody understands. The call for service in Vermont for ambulance and first response squads has increased at 6 to 10% every year for the last 10 years. That's a direct result of the demographic and the changing environment and how sick our patients are. And with that growth in kind of response numbers, we have not seen the same amount of growth in workforce. In fact, we've seen a reduction. There are 2,800 EMS providers in the state of Vermont that serve the communities from one end of the state to the other, running over 102,000 calls every year. 96% of those people work for or participate with either partially or totally volunteer services. As part of that, 80% of those services are struggling right now to get enough people in their ranks so that they can serve the communities that they serve. Some things that are very different about EMS that most people don't understand. EMS providers, when you decide that you want to serve your community, the first thing you need to do is come up with $1,000 to take the class. You have to give up 2 nights a week for 6 months and every other Saturday, and then travel from one part of the state to another. Tests are available in Burlington. In the southern part of the state where I live, we can go to Albany or Springfield, Massachusetts, because we don't have the capacity in the state of Vermont to provide our own testing. So for the mere privilege of providing community service to your community, you can shell out $1,000 6 months of your life and then travel from one end of the state to the other. With that, we do have, we are working with many committees on some legislation, including House Ed and Senate Gov Ops, looking at things like creating a more balanced system for education. Your fire service personnel, is it okay if I keep going? Your fire service personnel and your law enforcement have education funding that's dedicated by the state of Vermont. EMS does not have it to that extent. For example, the fire service right now receives $1.5 million in education support. The total EMS system statewide receives $117,000, which is one of the reasons we're falling short. We heard about our community colleges and access to education. Vermont has one paramedic program that runs through Vermont Technical College. That program is currently 3 times the cost of every other program in New England, making that education completely inaccessible to most Vermonters. Other issues that we're looking at, mental health, the stress on our system is significant. It's hard to deny the fact that we have a mental health and substance abuse crisis in the state of Vermont. What we fail to realize is that the EMS providers, your local first responders on your first response squads, your fire departments, your ambulance services, they're the primary access point for most of our mental health and substance abuse patients. But we're leaving those people behind. The increase in mental health related illnesses amongst our first responders is on the rise. Suicide amongst first responders is on the rise, and there's currently no system in place to support the first responders that work in EMS and volunteer fire service. There's some legislation that we're working on this year as well to try to bolster that response and provide a similar level as we do to state agencies. For example, the state police have peer support, access to clinicians that's completely state funded. Our volunteers, again, who gave their time, gave their money to take their classes, don't receive the same type of support. I could go on, and I'm sure the legislators in the room have heard me speak enough about EMS issues, but this is very important not only to your community, but to the communities across the state. Our system is on the verge of collapse. We don't have enough personnel, we don't have enough financial resources. The Medicaid population in Vermont is currently paying about 30% of the cost of delivering the service. Any business people in the room would understand that if you're getting paid 30% of your costs, you are going to go out of business. 42%, just to put it into perspective, 42% of career EMS professionals in the state of Vermont are looking to leave because of wages. We lose 20% every single year. So it is a crisis. We appreciate the support that we have from our legislators, and I would ask that the community continue to support your local EMS services as they try to struggle their way through low reimbursement rates and a lack of personnel to get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. You got some copies, maybe?
I do. If anybody would like the legislative report, I'd be glad to share.
Okay, good. Mr. Sharp, how are you?
I'm good, Bill, thank you. So I'm curious about the status of pre-K. I see that there is a draft bill in committee. I requested a copy of that because I can't find it electronically. And I would love a copy of it, and I'd like to have any response from legislators as to what's going on with pre-K.
So first, Dave, let me apologize. I've been flat on my back with a bad cold all weekend. I will fulfill your request for a copy of the bill as soon as I get home. For those of you who don't have a background in this, back in, I think 2014, maybe earlier, we created Act 166, which created a universal pre-K program across the state, which opened up pre-K funding for 3- and 4-year-olds. And that has evolved in different ways. There's for those who use the private system, if you attend an approved private preschool, usually comes in the form of essentially a voucher of about $3,200 as a subsidy. And it also gave school districts incentives in their pupil count to create public pre-K programs. It has been jointly administered by the Agency of Health, Agency of Human Services, and the Agency of Education. That's been a very complex, challenging relationship, and we now have a bill that would disentangle the two agencies and basically give the Agency of Education oversight over pre-K programs in public schools and keep oversight of pre-K programs in private settings under the auspices of the Agency of Human Services. This bill also has some other adjustments that have to do with monitoring and other things, but the idea is to make it a little bit simpler in terms of regulatory oversight, but still maintain the connections that have developed, that have evolved as the system has progressed. I mean, it's actually, we've improved access for kids to a large extent to pre-K, and we have created relationships between the public sector and the private sector that have been beneficial to both sides. If we take, for example, the Addison Central School District, about 80% of the pre-K kids actually attend private programs, not public programs. Yet the money flows through the public agency, through the school system, and so that's allowed a lot of sort of cross-pollination of training, of other things. We have a pre-K coordinator who sort of coordinates all of the system throughout Addison County. So it's evolved into a system that is, as the kinks get worked out, providing a lot of benefit to kids. Anyway, so this bill is not a bill that's going to radically change things, but it is more seen from the inside about disentangling cumbersome oversight where two agencies had to work together. These agencies have had a number of different secretaries over the past few years, so it's been very complicated, and to make it a little more streamlined.
Thank you. Next question.
Missy Johnson opened up the session stating she wanted more transparency and decorum among the fighting factions. And on the 7th, the next day of January, turns out there's a new bill that was put forth and opposing parties weren't notified. People from out of state were able to come in and fight in defense of, and I'm talking about H610. And to make a long story short, in terms of two issues regarding due process or lack thereof with the National Instant Criminal Background Check System and domestic violence, but there's no due process. And these things are being pushed through without Chris Bradley, who heads the Vermont Federations of Sportsmen's Clubs, which, by the way, is having a big shindig tomorrow, Montpelier State House, 5 o'clock. So anyways, if you support liberty and not tyranny, I expect that you will be there tomorrow. And I'm wondering if this is a general issue that's coming up right now, where people are disregarding being open and fair, if it's just Maxine Grad who heads the Judiciary Committee for the House, or if it's one side conservative versus progressive.
Anybody want to talk to that?
All I can tell you is that there were two sponsors, they're both from Judiciary, and it's in-house Judiciary, and none of us is on that committee. I don't know if it's going anywhere, I haven't seen anything. I was just trying to look it up to see what's happening. I can't tell you any more about it, but that's where it is in-house Judiciary.
So it's a House bill, so I won't speak to that particular bill. But on the issue of transparency, I agree that the legislature should be as open and accessible as possible. When I worked on a group that manages the legislative website, we changed it a lot to try to make it more useful. So you don't have to get to Montpelier or call your senator or rep in order to get hold of a bill. We've made improvements, but I think we need to make more improvements. For instance, that even drafts of bills as they progress should, it's not a standard practice yet, but to make every draft available on the same day that it's introduced so that you can follow a bill from a distance, not have to chase it down, which is hard to do. Sometimes I have to call the lawyers for other committees to get copies of bills because they're not posted anywhere. So I think that's not especially, it's not that someone's trying to keep something from people, it's just not making the extra effort, I think, to make it easier to get hold of information. There have also been questions this year about the Freedom of Information Act, and should the state be allowed to charge fees for providing copies and access to information. And Government Operations Senate GovOps has been talking about this. The question I've been asking my fellow colleagues is, let's quantify how much it costs the state to provide free access to all government records? Because right now you can be charged, and in some cases the fees are significant enough that it's an obstacle to getting that information. If we're going to live up to making government as open and transparent as possible, we should know how much it costs to provide free and open access. Because it may turn out that we think it's worth writing the check to make sure you're not charged a fee, that we always want it to be free, open access. But we don't have the information yet. What does it cost to provide that service? So we can't have a complete conversation. So the first step in government work is sometimes slower than we would all like, is to figure out how much does it cost to make free access to all government documents. Then let's have a second conversation about, do we want to underwrite that cost as a general obligation in order to make government as open and accessible as possible?
I just want to follow up on H610. I just happened, again, you can go to the website and get all this information. I went to the agenda for House Judiciary for this week, and it turns out on Wednesday at 10:30, H610 is being taken up. There are 13 witnesses they have asked to come, including Chris Bradley. So you can check it out on the website and see who else is on there. I'm not going to read the list of names.
Mark Melvin again from Addison. I don't know if I'm wearing out my welcome, but a lot of our laws come from Roman law. And you've probably heard about the 12 tablets, and nobody could be convicted of anything unless it was printed on the Roman tablet, the 12 tablets in the Forum. Caligula started, the emperor that everybody was glad died or got killed, would have scribes come in at night and inscribe laws that he wanted on the backside and in hidden places so they couldn't see it. And then he would so our rules on having things posted comes from that. Now we need open legislature, and part of the problem is all these meetings and hearings and stuff are scattered throughout the website. We should have one website for the state government that lists and posts all hearings, all meetings on all topics, so that people can put that on their favorite and go through it. And I find it, trying to find a meeting that I know is existing, I can't find it, and then I hear in the paper that they had it. So I would like to see that change. Thank you.
I'll jump up with a quick update. So we have three co-equal branches of government. The legislative branch manages its own website, and from that single homepage, you can get a list of every committee, every hearing, and it's updated in real time on a daily basis. It's not perfect. Again, I was citing draft bills aren't always listed along the way, but it is it's fairly close to one-stop shopping for legislative work.
Next question.
My name's Paul Miller. I'm going to put a different hat on. I'm a Bridport resident, and I'm on the planning board. There's 3 Bridport planning board members. Ed, raise your hand. Joanne. And we're working on the energy plan. Bridport's kind of the tale of 2 cities. We have some rich people in town, and we have a lot of working poor and a lot of retirees. Let me start by saying I have solar panels on my roof. My wife drives a Prius. We've changed every light bulb in the house except one. I can't get the damn garage door to take an LED light to LEDs. So we, as a committee, started talking to people in town. And we'd go to people and say, hey, how about changing your light bulbs? Well, when you're on a fixed income and you're worried about buying new tires for your car or eating, again, buying new light bulbs is low on the list. And I thought, gee, that's low-hanging fruit. Everybody would do that. Boy, am I stupid. There are a lot of people that are living hand to mouth. And although I'm very much in favor of saving the environment, saving the planet, I personally invested thousands of dollars to do that. I'm worried about the people in my town. Heat pumps are expensive. Insulating your house is expensive if you're living, again, hand to mouth. So we're betwixt in between. The select board has basically said to us, we don't want to spend a lot of money on this. We don't want to up taxes. We feel our taxes are high enough. So we're kind of betwixt in between. We feel, again, that with time, technology, cars will get more efficient. Instead of the gas guzzler truck I drive, there may be electric trucks. But to do that in the time frame for 2025 or 2050, we're not sure it's reasonable. So we're really kind of betwixt in between on how to face the economic realities with the benefits. So in my town, again, I see a lot of the people that have money putting in solar panels, making these improvements. But the low end are not. And when I talk to them about it, they look at me like I have 2 heads. So.
Thank you for that question and sharing that information. You know, no matter what 180 people we elect, the quality of the work of the legislature is dependent on hearing from, learning from the 626,000 Vermonters outside the building, which is why I've been to something like 130 legislative breakfasts. It's one way to keep on hearing and learning. So I share your concern about how do we transform our energy economy to one that helps every Vermonter make the transition in a fair and just way. One thing to pause before sort of dipping into it is to say, what's the current system? How well is the current system working? And if there is the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, VEIC, just released a report about a month ago. It's called the Vermont Energy Burden Study. And it shows that average income in Vermont is $58,000. The average household spends between $5,800 and $6,000 a year on energy. So that's electricity plus heating and cooling and transportation. So all in. If you're at $58,000, that's 10% of your budget. But if your family income's half of that, now you're up to 20%. And it's a huge burden on many lower and moderate income families. All the money they're already spending on energy products. So when you take all of them together, and since we all, I think, just have one wallet to pay out of, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's an electric bill or a gas bill or a heating fuel bill. So what we're trying to do, and we've made progress, but we have to always be sensitive to the ability of people to participate, is how do you move away from a system that is already very expensive for low and moderate income families to something that's more affordable. And we have, for instance, a low-income weatherization program. The problem with that program, well, I'll pause to say what it does. It comes in, does an energy audit on a home, and then provides weatherization, indoor air quality, looks at how you heat and cool the place. You can get a new boiler, for instance, if that's part of bringing your house up to snuff, making it more affordable to live there. And the average installation is in the neighborhood of $8,000 per home. It's totally underwritten by state programs. We raise money by very lightly taxing our home heating fuels, 2 cents. But that has a 52-year waiting list currently. Last year, we looked at increasing the 2 cents to 4. The governor said that would be unaffordable, and we should not move that, and he said he would veto if it got there. Frankly, with many of my Senate colleagues, I had a bill with that built into it to try to shorten that waiting list, and there wasn't broad support for it. So we have a challenging landscape to work in order to make progress, but there's ample data to show that when you move people over to newer, cleaner energies, whether we're talking about your home, how you move yourself around, cars, electric vehicles. Right now in Burlington Electric, for instance, it's equivalent of paying 62 cents a gallon for gasoline. They have a special tariff that's very low for charging electric vehicles. The challenge is, how do you get more low and moderate income people to make those electric vehicles affordable? We're working on trying to make used electric vehicles accessible to people, because 2 out of 3 cars sold in Vermont are used cars, not new cars. So we are remodeling sort of on all fronts, regardless of whether, again, across 3 fuel types. And I'll just say, next year we'll have a report back from the PUC to help us create an all fuels energy efficiency program. So what Efficiency Vermont has done for Vermonters on reducing their electric bills, we are looking forward to having a program that will do that for transportation and for heating and cooling. We're on our way there. We're doing a bill right now that's an intermediate step, but you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that as we clean up our energy supply, we make sure it's an affordable energy supply.
Ed Payne report, and I don't know the designation of it, but when I was up in Virgins, I spoke about some sort of energy consortium that would be sort of independent of the control of the Vermont legislature and governor, etc. And I'm afraid of that. We're Vermont, and we have problems that we have to solve. But I don't want a bunch of people someplace else giving us laws and regulations that, as Chris says, many of us won't be able to comply with. God knows we have our own A&R, which had been pushing curbside collection of food waste and make it universal. Now, last I knew, the smallest collection that was viable curbside was a ton per square mile per week. Now, that don't fit the majority of Addison County. I don't know, somebody told me what the population per square mile was. But I know from what I have, and I don't care about it, but my wife is separating out stuff, and we're lucky to get him what would fit in a ice cream thing in a week or 2 weeks. So, okay, and we're, I think they've gone away from it, but we have enough stupidity in our own legislature and government that we need to deal with.
Yeah, that's right. We do have enough stupidity in our own legislature.
Stop electing those stupid people and elect Democrats instead.
Yeah.
Okay, you gotta,
Progressives versus conservatives.
if you have a question or a comment, please go to the mic. And be civil.
I will. All right. I'm going to wait till this lady goes because I have the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Okay, and I'd love to know your name at some point in time.
Oh, it's Dan Longer, New Haven.
Well, I just wanted to catch up. And Chris, I'm sorry to put you on the spot again, but because I think you might know this. I sat in a Public Utilities Commission hearing last year for a community solar project that is actually going up in Shoreham, very exciting. But that project took 4 years to get to where it is. Partly that was due to opposition, but some of it was due to just the permitting process. So, and I know that there was some interest in that committee in seeing if they could streamline that process so that it wasn't so intimidating for solar projects. So any news on that?
Thanks for the question. So the permitting for permitting energy projects, the so-called Act 248 permit that utilities and individuals get, if you want to connect to the grid, for instance, with a solar project, is held by the PUC. It's quite formal. It has, because there's cost implications of connecting cost and technical engineering implications of connecting to the grid, it's a formal process to make sure the engineering is proper and that the site is well sited. For instance, in the case of solar, we passed Act 177 3 years ago to rebalance the power decision making around renewable energy projects. It was all held by the state. Any applicant or town, when they came before the PUC, they were given due consideration. Towns argued, many towns, they felt like due consideration was not sufficient. It was too little consideration. So we changed it to say that if a town adopts a town energy plan that is in concert with the regional energy plan, and those are in concert with the state energy plan. And the reason we have all this planning is because it's literally the world's most complicated machine is our grid. So the thought was, okay, let's keep planning as an overall a unified system in place, but then let's let each town make its own decisions about what's best for them in terms of being part of this cleaner energy future. Act 177 passed. If a town goes ahead and gets a town energy plan, if a project comes up in that town, the town is given quote unquote substantial deference, meaning the teeter-totter has tipped from having some influence, but mostly you're not going to prevail, to you should prevail unless there's a compelling reason for that project to go forward. So a compelling reason might be that the grid will be unstable without a new substation, that kind of thing. It's much less about energy siting. So towns that have gone ahead and done a town energy plan and got them approved have more influence over those proceedings, and towns that don't have a town energy plan have less influence. And that's that is the balancing off. You know, with power comes responsibility. We're saying if towns want to have that level of control, they should do a town energy plan, and then they will prevail, I think, generally at the PUC. I'd be happy to talk to you after you get the details on a specific project, why it took that long. That does sound like an inordinate amount of time, and sometimes that's related to other permits, not just what goes on at the PUC.
Yes, sir, you're up next, and then the young lady over there. And I think we have another question here, and anybody else that hasn't spoke, we've only got about 10 minutes left, so please get up.
I'm on the Planning Commission in New Haven. Substantial deference means zip legally. And in '68, when the town plans came through, the value of that is that it gives each town the ability to fight for funding. The 800-pound gorilla in the room is the fact that we are not bringing more money in, and I don't like Governor Scott any more than most of the other people in this room, and I will not be voting for him as I did not last time. But that's for other reasons. He at least keeps a cap on spending in this state. If Vermonters really want to keep spending, that's their business. I'll just back away. I already have. But I'll tell you this. Forbes, in 2018, Vermont was 47th in terms of being business unfriendly. Now it's 45th. Not much of an improvement statistically. But until you guys start bringing big business in, you are not going to be able to afford the things you'd like everybody to go along with, which is making us feel nice, warm, and fuzzy. Okay? This is one of the cleanest states in the nation.
So Heidi, you have the next comment and the last for the day.
You're going to bring your own cake?
I'm going to be in Virginia.
I just want to express my appreciation to all of our senators and representatives. Representing a very diverse group of people is not an easy job, and I really appreciate you showing up on occasions like this on a regular basis, for taking all the different opinions and ideas and thoughts that we express here and elsewhere with an even temperament, and then trying to synthesize those out and take them back to Montpelier. Democracy is messy and unpleasant sometimes, but you guys are doing some really hard work, and I, for one, appreciate that. So thank you.
I'd like to thank Member Nestor for providing the refreshments for today, and the space, a nice space, and good general public use of your facility. Thank you very much. Have a great day and a great week.